Hello, welcome to the Tabletop Call-In Show. Today is April 25th, 2021. It is 1 o'clock p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, and your hosts, Adam Bell and Jeremy Gage, are here to talk about games with you. Call in with the Discord, chat with us about whatever the hell you want to talk about. You can ask us a question. You can tell us about a game that you've played. You can tell us about a game that you've made. You could, whatever you want to do, and we're going to talk about it and share our opinions. Because we decided we wanted to have a show.
That's how the show works.
Yeah. It's not because we're experts or anything. It's because we're the ones with the show.
You contractually obligated the second you became a viewer of this show that you get to listen to our opinions.
That's right. And you like it, I hope. If you don't, I don't know why you keep watching. Yeah.
Yeah. How are you today, Adam?
I'm good. Should we do...
Yeah, you should do it.
They know who we are. Should we tell them who we are?
Yeah, absolutely.
There might be strangers. I'm Adam Bell. I make games. I think about games. I do other things too, but that's less important to the premise of this show. You know,
I think it matters.
Well, it matters, but like I don't need to start listing all of my other hobbies here. That's not relevant to the viewer. If it comes up, if it comes up, it comes up. But you don't want to just enter with that. Anyway, you could find me on Twitter at AdamEBell. Get my games at adamebell.games. I promise that I'm working on them.
Today's theming will be ask us as personal a question as you can. Don't do that. Well, I don't know. We have the obligation to say I don't want to answer that. But I'm Jeremy Gage. I keep saying I'm making games, and I am. I just don't have anything out there for you to look at. So that's a thing. But you can come check me out at the Draw Your Dice podcast, which is going to go through a metamorphosis in the next couple months. Yeah, I'm thinking about some rebranding things. I'm thinking about because I got some interviews to put out there that are going to last a couple months. So I'm excited to apply some new marketing tactics, and keep doing the thing that I love, and also pay rent with it.
Ooh, that's important.
Yeah, that's a good thing that I want to do. So I hope people find value enough in what I'm doing to give me money.
Hang on.
I'm holding.
I can't tell if there's a construction situation or if somebody's knocking on my back door.
Someone's working on a roof near me.
No, it's me too.
Oh, good.
We got a double. I don't think it's somebody knocking on the door because they're very persistent, so we're good. Go back into the headphones. Wow, that really derailed me. I'm excited to see what you do with the show, with the Draw Your Dice podcast. It's a good one. Maybe there's a future to this show that we could think about at some point. But the only one we got to worry about is next week. No show because I'm moving. So if you are viewing this or listening to this later on the week or on the day of May 1st, May 2nd. We will not be broadcasting to you because we will be my desk will be in pieces. You don't want that.
And really, Adam is the technical genius behind all of this. So there's not really an option to sublet the Adam E. Bell Twitch.tv channel because Adam owns it.
Well, we could arrange so that you could stream from it, but then we'd also have to arrange so that you know how to do all the stuff that I do, which... It seems like
busy packing.
Yeah. That does seem like a worthwhile thing to do at some point, I think, so that it doesn't rely on me, but not right now.
For everyone in the chat, call in as soon as possible. Otherwise, you have to keep doing this with us.
Yeah, we have to just keep talking about whatever. Actually, we do have questions in the backlog.
Yeah. Oh, that's true. We do have. Yeah, let's do that
those.
while we wait. Let's do a Twitter question. If you're not privy to Twitter questions, every week we put out a post for you to put questions into in case you can't make it on Sundays that we read off here, and also in case we have dead viewership or dead call-in space, which we constantly fear. I'm just being real. Let's see what I have pinned here.
I don't know if fear is the right word for it. Maybe for you, I guess.
Yeah, for me, I am fearful. I
don't fear the lack of calls. I expect it at some point. It's got to happen.
We have 3 questions. I think I'm just going to go from the earliest.
Okay.
Right? 411. Oh, they're all 411. Oh, wait, I pinned them all on 411.
Oh, boy.
All right, I'm just going to pick one. I'm going to do Paulino Caputo. Paulino Caputo asked us a question a couple weeks ago. Which designer do you want to smooch the most, and why is it me? But also, on a more serious note, I want to know your die size tier lists, you sick bastards.
You want me to start with this?
I read, so you get to answer first.
That seems like some bullshit. Die size tier list. Well, the first one. Does that really need an explanation why it would be Lino? Do we need to explain why the designer we want to smooch the most would be Lino? I think that explains itself.
Yeah, I think Lino has powerful vulnerability. Lino just put out they just put out a game called In the Spring. Let me double check. Meanwhile, you can talk about your tier list, Adam, while I look up this link.
Here's a little thing about me. I'm thinking about this. I'm genuinely trying to engage with this. I'm very bad at the idea of favoritism and ranking preferences. So, like, unless I dislike something actively, as I hold up a D4 for the listener to the camera. So, like, that's on the bottom. I would say D6 is theoretically up there because, I mean, it's a classic, but also I'm bored by the D6 a little bit. I hear the D12 is the best dice. People say that. Everybody's saying that. What are we doing? What is this? What is this content? The D20, a lot of bad associations, I think, with that. You know, like it's the Dragon Games die.
Yeah.
It's your turn.
I didn't want to do all 7, huh? Okay. I'm here to do all 7. I'm going to start from the bottom. The bottom for me is probably, and we're talking singular dice systems, not like multiple dice and like some sort of bell curve things. Go check out Tech Jam by the host of the Brain Trust Discord podcast.
Nope.
Tech Jam,
the Brain Trust podcast.
Adam Vast wrote a really cool piece on all the things you can do with 2d6. So definitely go check that out. But for me, singular dice. From the bottom, going to the top, at the bottom for me is going to be the D20 for Dragon Game reasons, and also just like its polyhedral conditions are too round, so I don't feel like, I don't know, it just takes you for a wild ride when you roll it like in a box or something. It's like spinning on itself. So that's my least favorite. Next up, we'll go with the D6. I think it's trite. It's in a lot of things. Yahtzee, Monopoly.
Trite.
It's a good dice.
Yahtzee's a good game.
Dice. Yeah. Then we're gonna go with the D12 because it's sort of an underdog dice. So that's my 4th place. Then the D4, 3rd place for me here. The D8 will be my 2nd in place, and then leaving the D10/D100 because D100 is easy to understand when you talk about like percentage chances and things like that.
And there we have it.
And there we have it.
It's a very fascinating insight.
Thank you, Paulino Caputo, for the engaging question.
We do have a caller in the waiting room now. It's MV. Return caller.
MV.
Coming in 3, 2, 1. Hello. Thanks for calling the Tabletop Call-In Show. How you doing? Are you out there?
Hi, MV.
I got a little bit confused because you didn't say you were getting me in.
It's a 3-second delay.
I said it. You can hear it now.
Like a 10-second delay, whatever.
It takes a while for the show to get across the ocean.
What's up? How are you?
Doing all right. It's a sunny Sunday over here.
Jealous.
I need to remember what I was gonna call in with because I'm just thinking about dice now.
It's good to think about dice.
Thinking about dice, but I was thinking about character sheets. Actually, that was my initial reason. I'm doing some design work now, and just want to ask, sort of, maybe what was your favorite recent character sheet that you've used, and if you used any. After hearing Jeremy talk a lot about this, I know that you use digital character keepers a lot. I kind of want to hear about that sort of thing. I know digital character sheets are very nice for like holding on to a lot of information at once. But I'm also thinking about very minimalistic sort of character sheets and how digital can sort of maybe excel on that also. And of course, I love paper because you can kind of very easily do stuff, adjust it very easily too. And yeah, just sort of want to hear your opinions on what's your favorite, maybe underrated character sheets and stuff like that.
I can go because you started
That's
technically
right.
sort of kind of last time and then chickened out of the answer. So I want the full tier list by the end of the show. You're not getting out of it.
Character sheet tier list. This whole show will be tier list now.
It'll be the tier list college show. No, what a trend. For me, I think first talking about the differences between like print and digital. For me, I like digital, like you said. I know that you sort of semi-predicted my answer, but I like digital because it makes I would say bookkeeping a little more simplified in terms of like the number. We tried to start a game. We're still trying to start a game of Band of Blades. At some point, we'll figure it out. But Band of Blades has a lot of character sheets, like a ton of administrative work. And I will never do that in a print form ever again. It's just like binders and binders of stuff for players. It's a bit of a cognitive journey. So in respect to like getting away from maybe like the physical binder, I prefer like digital character sheets. And I also like what digital can do in sense of like user experience design, like user interface things. I feel like if you consider things like applications, like constructing an app character sheet specifically for your game that can create like maybe there's an avatar in the center and like you can sort of manipulate your heads up display for what I just think about video games and how they work to create heads up displays that don't tax the field of activeness. So you're like in an action game, you don't want like a bunch of numbers and shit like in front of you, and like even simple platformers may have a health mechanic that's just like fades out when it's not active, and when you get hurt it comes back, right? So like that kind of stuff. So I think about how digital character sheets can emulate that. However, I will say that for print, there's like really cool things you can do with folding and that sort of manipulation that can feel very fun. Like that's a very interactive thing. And I think if your game design calls for that sort of interactiveness, like creating a trifold or even sort of like inserts. Like I know that oh shit, what's the game? Strauss is currently working on it. Is it Spell and Blade? But Strauss, the one of the writers for Band of Blades, is working on a game where they have sort of like a window pane slide in character sheet, which is really fun and also emulates some of the things that you would do with digital. Like if you were to insert like a class or a background, it would change probably your character sheet digitally. They've figured out how to do it physically, so I think that's very cool. As far as like minimalistic design, I mean, the most minimalistic design is like the list, right? Like you open a Google Doc, you just type out a list of all of your abilities. Thing that's like as minimal as you can do. Literally just body copy and no formation whatsoever. But that's not always a great like user experience sort of thing. So I think that when you think about minimalistic design in tandem with user experience design, and there are probably people who are listening to me say this right now who are like, well, that's not necessarily true. Please call in because I'm not the smartest person on the planet. But when you think about minimalistic design and user experience design as two things, or I'm sorry, maybe more user experience design with minimalistic style is probably the more accurate thing to say. I would consider like, I think minimalism is based on the game. And what I mean is if your game only has 3 things a character needs in it, then you only need to put 3 things on the sheet, right? I think the minimalism is based on what the game requires of you to play it. You know, games with like resource management and modifiers and a whole bunch of stuff can still be minimalistic. It's just in the sense of like how many pieces does the game demand of you to put on a character, right?
I have a lot to add to this actually. So I'm kind of glad in the direction you went because that's like the direction I was thinking about. I want to highlight the word flexibility, I guess, because that's where kind of digital excels at, where paper not so much. When you write something onto a sheet of paper, it kind of stays there until you like erase it, but erasing is also sort of an action, like you have to do it. But in digital, you can sort of swap things very easily, erase, delete, copy, paste, and stuff like that. And you can very easily display information at the appropriate time and like appropriate place. So for example, in Hyperlight Drifter, which is a video game, you have a health meter that only is displayed when you're near something that you can fight, essentially. And I kind of like that about user experience design. Like if you don't need it, it's not there. And if you need it, it appears. CompCon kind of does this. You have several tabs. You have tabs for when your character is not in combat, you have one character sheet. When you're in combat, you have another character sheet. And that's the sort of thing I kind of want to crack in pen and paper design. I like how you mentioned window panes, sliding in, sliding out. That's like perfect. But maybe replicate this on a more low-tech, lo-fi scale by folding pieces of paper. So maybe you have your health bar is like the top half of a page. And when you're not using it, you just fold it and you have something else written there. And then when it's combat, you unfold it and you have you have a bigger character sheet essentially.
You could do like a little 8-page zine thing. Like just different spreads or different types of info.
Yeah, this is the sort of kind of space I'm interested in right now.
Me too. Same. My space is constantly evolving because I don't have anything out there, so I'm with you.
I'm just reading the chat now, and Dan is writing about accessibility design.
Like we can do color blend modes with a bunch of stuff. We can do things for dyslexia. Like it's digital has some powerful applications, and I think they both digital and print come with their own pros and cons. Like we think about like, oh, print is so much more accessible in terms of like cost, which is sort of true, but not everyone has a printer, right? I mean, I guess anyone can go to a library, but like you can also like hand draw a character cheat from the internet, which required. And then digital stuff is like, who owns a tablet, who owns a phone, who owns a computer, right? Like all those things are considerations, I think, regardless of print or digital, right? And people have to buy ink, and ink is expensive. Like they sell you a cheap printer, so they can sell you expensive ink. Don't get me started. But yeah,
I think my favorite character sheet are note cards. That was supposed to sound smarter. And then I heard it coming out and I was like, what are you saying? But no, like games like a lot of GM-less games do this where, you know, there's not a lot of like character specific mechanics necessarily, but Follow, for example, Follow by Ben Robbins, you just set up a couple of note cards that have like, is this true? Yeah, that is true. It's Kingdom that has specific ones, but Follow, you set up a couple of note cards with like your character name and some details, and then that's it. You just have it. It's easy to get up and running with that. To me, obviously, that's not going to work for more involved mechanical games, but that's nice. You could do things like, I mean, I feel like I bring up 10 Candles more than I really expect to. It's surprising how much that game is apparently lodged in my brain. But like that one, you have like a character is based on there are 4 note cards. There's like a trait, obviously your name. You've got
vice, virtue,
vice,
name,
virtue,
and background, something like
that. Brink is the last one.
Oh yeah.
It's like the fucked up thing that you can do. But like as you go on, like burning those, getting rid of them, and like going through the stack to see which one's active, that's cool tech.
Yeah, and that's also like the flexibility tech of it. That note cards are easily reshuffleable, and so much of 10 Candles is that you create like parts of the character for like different people.
Right.
I think it's you create a vice for a person on your right and virtue for a person on your left. So it's inherently very flexible because you have to like pass it around the table.
Yeah, very modular.
Yeah.
The other type of character sheets that I would start thinking about is like Forged in the Dark and Powered by the Apocalypse, where they have all of the move text on the sheet. Leaves me kind of conflicted a little bit in that it's nice to have it all there, but also it's extraordinarily busy.
Yeah.
To have, so like there's definitely pros and cons to that kind of stuff, which like could be maybe helped with like you were saying, where you have just hide the information that you don't need. So if those were more of like a pamphlet thing, so like okay, I can go to the pane that have my stats when I need the stats, but I don't have to be like looking at these dots. I can go to can have like a middle spread with all of my powers, but again, don't have to be looking at it all the time.
Feels like if it was like digital tech, it would be like hover text. You would hover over the name, it will show you what it does. And yeah, it's tricky to do.
Yeah, but then when you have to start considering if you are going to be hiding things, like how likely it is that it'll go out of the player's mind. Because if you're if you've only got the power and it's like you have to hover over it, you have to engage with it in some way to see the text. There's a chance, if it's not that important, there's a chance that they just never think about it. I think about because D&D spells a lot with that, where like you have this whole list of spells, but like obviously you didn't memorize all 20 spells that your character can cast, so you're just gonna cast Fireball, like. Because you gotta go look up the thing. You gotta like engage with it in some way, which is
a lot. A lot of the PBTA rules are just moves. Are if you do something, do this, right?
If you see something, say something.
Yeah. If the players like see in front of them that if they do this, they can do this, they will engage with it. I guess like that's the important text. not the name of the rule.
Right.
If you're playing for the first time and stuff like that, because I guess there's a sleepaway, and it has like a lot of these location sheets that you can pick up if you're doing something, and moves you can do if you're doing something. I've played that game so many times that I know by heart, like, what do I need to do. But I always played with like first time players, and they sort of have a hard time engaging with the game because they don't remember, and they don't, like, because there's so many sheets on the table, they don't see really clearly what is available to them, what actions they can take. They sort of have to, even if it's like a analog play space, they can't see like across the table what sheet is there, what can they do with it. So yeah, that was my thought about also designing for engagement. How much does something take space on a character sheet? If you have like a very large space for a portrait on the character sheet, like just a half of the character sheet is just your portrait, that means that your look is probably very important. And stuff like that.
I think there's a lot of potential for the future physical production of games to have moves written on cards, and so like you can just have like a nice little stack of reference cards that you go through instead of like a kind of unwieldy sheet. You could just like be flipping through cards that have like if it's a PBTA game, have the trigger, like the when you do X, like in the same place on every card, so it's easy to flip through them. I think that would be solid. I think actually, now that I say that, there's a deck of cards with all of the moves on it for at least the first edition of the Worldwide Wrestling RPG.
Oh yeah, for sure.
There's like a deck of just all of the wild moves you can have in that game, and that whenever I do end up playing it will be very helpful, I think, to just have these cards.
I just put up just to help. There's Clayton Notestein helped very much in our conversation on DYD about talking about visual design, and has a website called, not Clayton, but Clayton has led me to a website called Laws of UX that I put in the chat for you, and for anyone who's listening to this question who might be interested. I think that's a great
it's a great resource.
Yeah.
I looked at it almost every week, probably.
Oh, good.
Just to refresh. It has, I think it's still like a little bit digitally focused.
Yeah. Like website design kind of stuff.
Yeah. Because it's very focused on that your medium is flexible. It is possible to hide things and etc. But there are still a lot of principles that apply to kind of everything in general. So it's this, like, you kind of have to know what to apply when. I think, probably that's it for me. If you have anything else to chat about, this is really interesting to sort of express in a vocal way.
Hey, oral brainstorming. I'm here for it.
I will say I have not played Band of Blades in person, but I think I would prefer the binder over
what?
Like the Roll20 thing. I like shuffling through papers and trying to find the right one. Oh, it's so much, because then it's a physical thing.
Oh no!
Dude, be the marshal.
You are
the marshal, aren't you?
I don't remember.
Didn't we decide you were the marshal?
I don't remember, but I would do it. It sounds fun.
Every character sheet and tick health boxes, heart
Hell
boxes, and stress. No,
you're keeping track of your people. That's what you're. It's hard work being a marshal.
You got the clipboard, dude.
Exactly.
While you were bickering, I thought of one more thing.
Okay. Wow. Bickering. You have something to say, MP?
No, it's actually location-based information. sort of if you have a character sheet and you have to lay out cards, for example, in a certain way, like tarot does this.
Like a spread.
Yeah, it's important where something is lying on the sheet. It carries some sort of information. And I'm sort of thinking, I've been thinking about a game like this. This could probably be my tech term entry because I don't know how to apply it. Basically, a character sheet that has slots for playing cards. And essentially each card is maybe a move or sort of narrative trigger that you can sort of lay around your character sheet, and different slots will mean different things for that card. So yeah. Thanks so much for having me.
Anytime you got anything to shout out on your way out the door?
Yeah.
Exactly. I'm working on a Scratch and Claw adventure. It looks really nice. I need to finish the text a little bit. I hope it's coming this week.
Awesome.
So you can follow me on Twitter at @mayvisit and my itch page at mdmb.itch.io. So I will definitely post something when it comes out. Yeah, thanks. Bye everyone.
See you later. Thanks for calling.
Yeah.
Bye, MB.
Look at 3 Papers is good, actually. Here's the thing.
Go ahead, hit me with it. Sell me on ripping through 20 pieces of paper in your own spare time.
Oh, you do it in your own spare time?
Yeah.
I love it. That's fucking great. Sell me on clicking 45 times in Roll20's horrendous UI in my spare time.
You don't have to click 45 times. Just click one.
What?
If you bought the game, they have special buttons where you can just everyone takes one harm tick. Automated.
Okay.
Yeah. But the free version, absolutely, you do have to go digitally. It's just the same thing. You just don't have to keep. You don't have to erase and then draw and then erase and then draw.
You're losing if you're just clicking one button and then everybody's getting hurt. You know that you're losing connection.
Paper. What do you mean?
With those characters, those are real people.
Those are soldiers.
Well, the paper version feels like you you get a real connection with the characters. That's all I'm saying.
I'm connected either way.
All right. We've got another return caller. Raftamiko is sitting in the waiting room waiting for us to chat. To hopefully get us off of this. I did look at the chat for once, and they're calling it Dad and Dad are fighting again.
Welcome to Dad and Dad Minute, where we just go in on each other.
All right.
Is that too sexy?
Thanks for calling the Tabletop College Show. How's it going?
What's up? Can you hear me?
Sure can.
Woo!
Hey. What's up, fellow humans? How's it going?
Doing great.
Human.
Love to be a human.
Yeah.
It's all you can ask on a Sunday morning. I guess over here in the West Coast, you're only human after coffee or after midday.
Heard.
I'm working on
the
it.
East Coast, it's still gray over here.
I had a question, but I also had to, I got a riff off the character sheet. I just, I was thinking during that whole conversation about LARP and how it puts this extra restriction on character sheets because you have to be able to carry them around, and you can't like Band of Blades. You kind of need the kind of Game of Thrones war table.
Yeah,
like a whole war room for all of the paper. And I was thinking specifically about there's this amazing Jason Morningstar game called Underwater People, which is it's a support group for kind of underwater sea creatures and monsters that live on land now, and they're not super happy about it. And so you play it like literally. You set it up like you're hosting a support group. You put your chairs in a circle, and you have like a separate beverage table, and all the character sheets kind of go on that table. And so people file in, and you greet them as if they're coming to support group, and then you can pick up, randomly generate your characters, and so you might be like the swamp thing that the swamp was kind of disappearing because of industrialization nearby, and so at some point you were just like, ah, fuck it, and kind of came into the city and got a job, and you have that character, and you also have an occupation, which might be, you created a successful franchise of hair salons, or you're like a realtor or something, and then you have different relationships, and the relationships, they're like super varied. So like one of them might be, you're married, you're happily married, you have kids, they don't know about your past, and you just don't want to tell them, or it could be like you're in like a torrid relationship with someone who's like super into the fact that used to be the Swamp Thing, and you just kind of feel different ways about that. So your entire character is these three things, plus a need, and the whole game is just kind of sharing and just kind of processing, getting little groups, and being like, well, I used to be a siren that could sink whole ships, and now I'm just kind of like in this loveless marriage, and I don't feel desired like the sailors used to, and it's like not super working for me. And it's brilliant. It's super brilliant, and it totally accounts for the fact that you're gonna be walking around. So like one of them is ideally it's like the sticker you put on your chest, essentially, with your name and your need, and then the other stuff is just handheld, really small, just kind of like a deck of cards with 3 cards.
I love that. It makes me also think, though, like applying it digitally, like with the advent of Apple Watches and Google Watches and stuff like that. Like, I wonder if there's a space for LARP where I don't have one. I've only like seen them. I haven't like interacted with an Apple Watch truly. But I would be curious as to like what is capable to put in a UX experience for like the LARP sphere of like just being able to like shift through something and have that data. And then like if it was an app that was like connective, like community based, you could be the person like facilitating or running the LARP that may like put out a prompt or put out an event, right? And be like, okay, now it's time for the in-game lunch, depending on what the LARP game is, right? And then that gets beeped to everyone who's playing at the same time, which could be like a cool immersive thing. So it makes me think about that as well.
You could even, taking that even one step further, you could imagine everyone's got an earpiece in, and the app, every so often it's like, I don't know why suddenly I'm thinking of like vampires and werewolves, but it's just like, you suddenly feel your claws beginning to grow, or like the need for blood appears.
The moon is rising.
That's cool as hell. Hang on.
Yeah, that's lit,
Hang
dude.
on a minute.
Oh man.
We have to stop the stream. We got a writing room to go to.
Character sheet is on your wrist.
Yeah.
The cloud, and it's theory.
And it's in your ear.
And then that even, again, one step further, I think about like the virtual assistants, right? Like Siri, Alexa, the Google Assistant, like all those things. You could set up automations for those, and triggers for those sorts of things. And then does that tie into like the health monitoring things? Like when your heart rate gets this high, I will say this thing. Like, I don't know. I'm saying there's a lot of cool LARP stuff.
Yeah.
That's sort of like being broken open in my mind when you think about the portability of like these watch devices, the earpiece things, the automations, the AI machine learning things that you can do with applications. I think that's an interesting like thing to explore in the LARP space, and maybe even in just like the tabletop digital space or analog space too. Like you could whisper secrets to people, like, or have certain AI triggers. Like it just depends on how deep you want to go with it. But
so for the audio thing that's what you could do for that is if you had somebody that is moderating, everybody could be have their phone in their pocket with an earbud in, and then they're all in like a Discord chat. So I'm thinking about our call-in show tech here, and what the moderator could do is like drag players into the voice chat with them to give them like a little piece of information, like your claws have grown or whatever. And so like you can live react to what's happening like as a moderator and feed people different bits of information that way. I think that could be cool.
Oh, shit, what, like an operator? Like,
yeah, you have like an operator like watching
yeah.
and paying attention, and then just dragging people in to give them little bits that change the way that they're interacting with the game.
I just got sent back to the fucking Armored Core games.
Yeah.
Inbound Armored Core approaching. My God, no.
Why? Now that's
Raph.
taking me over to those BattleTech spheres.
Yeah.
That are at every con.
Like, basically, this is like the GM setup of the future. It's like half the BattleTech arcade sphere, half the Matrix. You know, the kind of like in the what's it called, the Nebuchadnezzar, the console with the falling text. Like that's it. That's what Discord's gonna look like in 10 years.
I'm here for it. I want it. Jesus, that's good. I am gonna look into some app writing things after this for sure. I'm adding it to the docket, the long docket that I have on top of all the games. Raph, that wasn't even your question. What is your question today? I loved what we brought here, but I want to also give you the chance to ask your question.
Yeah. I will tell you the question I'm not going to ask. This is a very stupid question, which is: would you rather fight 100 indie game sized D&D manuals or one D&D sized indie game? Not my question.
Fight it.
Put it out there.
Yeah,
I'll chew on it.
I don't know what that even means.
No clue.
Moving on. I don't know. You might want to ponder it. I'll let you ponder it. No, I'll ask the question. I'm just kind of curious, like how. Right at the top of the show, kind of clipped about like personal questions. I'm actually kind of curious, like what was the first game, the first RPG that you played, and maybe to add a little bit of extra spice, like what if you could go back in time and deliver a message to that kind of young version of yourself, like what do you go back and say?
Do you want to roll to see who starts?
What are we rolling?
Let's roll a D4 and a D20.
What?
Just who gets the higher number. The roll off is here. We should do this way from now on.
I got a 3.
You got a 3 on 2 dice?
Yeah.
Impressive. I
rolled
15.
a 1 and a 2.
You're powerful. I guess I go first. My first game was D&D 5th edition back in 2017. I think that what was after Out of the Abyss? Whatever adventure came out after Out of the Abyss is when I started playing. It was like the Elemental Princes or something like that. But if I could go back in time and talk to my younger self about it would be more like a game mastering thing. It'd be like don't get so hung up on what you don't like. Don't get so hung up on canon. I think me and Adam talked about this. When did we talk about this? About canon and letting that go. I don't remember. Maybe it was the last call-in show.
I think the past two, both.
Yeah, both of them.
Yeah.
But I think there's this really weird thing that happens with D&D where you're first learning, especially if it's your first game, it like teaches you about prose and novels style things, and it makes you feel like you have to be beholden to the setting it puts forth in front of you. And I mean to like every piece. I mean, like, if you're not articulating the intricacies and democracies and tyrannies of Waterdeep, you aren't doing Waterdeep, you're doing a bastard version of it. And it may not say that explicitly, but it can make you feel like you're not doing a good job when you don't remember what's happening in fucking Neverwinter for whatever fucking reason. And
whoa.
Listen, I have a whole thing about like I don't like I bounce off of games that have like really big settings because I think some of them come from that train of like novel writing thought where the learning curve is so steep, and then once you hit that plateau where you feel like you're in a nice place of knowing it all, you're now jailed by that stuff. Like I took so long to learn all of this, I don't want to change any of it. And you make your players have to recognize that stuff. I think that's where like world Bible stuff comes from. Yeah, I think I would tell little Jeremy to I was miniature then. I would tell little Jeremy to not be so beholden to canon and let your players decide more things about the fictional space.
Cool. Yeah. My first game was 4th edition D&D. I played it a little bit in college. My roommate ran it for us. I had a fun time. We didn't stick to it too much. I think we got like 3 or 4 sessions in. And then, like group cohesion wasn't super strong. I don't know that everybody liked each other as much as they thought they did or something like that. You know how college friends are.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah, I'm here for it.
There's a lot of people to hang out with. So yeah, we did that. It played, I think we tried 3 times with different people trying to run it, and I came out of it with like an impression of, hey, role-playing seems fun. Maybe I'll do more at some point. And then out of college, played a little 5e, and that was good. That was as good as it was going to get, for 5e. I think I had a good time with it for a while, and eventually I did have a friend around that same time introduce me to Fiasco, and I just didn't get it. And I don't know if it was his fault or my fault, but I kind of enjoyed playing it, but never really wanted to do more of it, if that makes sense. Like I had fun because it was nice to hang out with my friend. But yeah, and then eventually, I don't know what happened, but it stuck, and now here I am with a fucking show about it. But what can I tell to younger me? See, I brought up the Fiasco experience because I don't know if I would have enjoyed these games as much when I was younger. I don't know if waiting until I got into them, I feel like that was probably the right move, because before then I didn't necessarily have the capacity to enjoy them that I do now, because I was a different person. I don't know. So maybe there's a lot that I could try to say to a younger version of myself that maybe is beyond the scope of the show. Do be better at being good to people. I don't know. You know how young people are.
Be me, yeah.
Yeah.
Little Adam.
Do it faster this time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. What about you, Raph? What was your first game?
As soon as I asked the question, I was like, do I even remember? And it's honestly, it might be. I did a lot of improv in my 20s, which is kind of where it all started for me in the storytelling side. And then when I moved to the Bay Area, so here's the thing, I can't remember if my first game was like a Microscope or a Fiasco, like one of those. I just remember just talking about that a lot and playing that pretty early. Or I actually think my first like true role-playing game was at Burning Man. The one time that I went, someone had told me that, this is a super weird story, but someone had told me that the best thing to do at Burning Man is to deliver the mail, because you can deliver, because people can send letters to Black Rock City, and then there's a post office, and they'll just kind of send runners out to deliver them around the 70,000 person insanity that is Burning Man. And it sounded kind of like an RPG to me, and I was like, oh man, that sounds really cool. So I signed up for it, walked up. Dude was like, "Why are you doing this? This is work." I was like, "No, no, no. It sounds so cool." I was like, "Bushy tail." He gives me 3 letters, not trusting them to ever arrive. And I get on my bike, go all across to the other side of the city to some camp in the boonies. And there was this meeting happening. At the end of the meeting, this kind of older gentleman kind of gets up and he's like, "Oh, and by the way, if anyone wants to play a role-playing game, you kind of come to my trailer at Friday at noon." And like time has no meaning there. and this is like 3 days before, in a place where time has no meaning. And I was like, sure, why not? I'll yes and that. So I went up to him afterwards. I was like, hey, I'm not part of your camp, but that sounds interesting. So 3 days later, went all the way across again, and I found myself in this air-conditioned trailer playing Archipelago with Peter Atkinson, and one of the founders of Wizards of the Coast, and a couple of other random people.
Weird.
And it was 5 hours long, and it was utterly magical, and it was just one of the most bizarre experiences of my life. Because that is just not the context where you expect to get around a table and get paper out and start making characters and drawing a map. It's very kind of sane thing to do in that environment. So Archipelago is real close to my heart ever since that. And I only played D&D for the first time, not last year, but the year before. I came to it super, super late.
Cool.
It's fine.
Yeah, non-traditional start.
Yeah.
I think my advice to my younger self is yes and strange men who tell you to come to their trailer and party that.
Just do it again.
Yeah,
which is
not universal advice for sure. But
not universally applicable.
Oh shoot. Well, Raph, I appreciate the question. Do you have anything you want to plug before we get the next guest on here in these last few minutes?
I'll say the zone is still out. thezonerpg.com, which I've started describing as if Jackbox had a mutant baby with Annihilation and Stalker.
It's a good pitch.
Yeah,
honestly.
Go check it out.
Awesome.
Thanks for having me on the show.
Yeah, thanks for calling in.
Absolutely. Thank you.
And should I had to kick.
Rest in peace.
Because I'm supposed to do that. It's like hanging up the phone. Like if this is a real call-in show, we'd be hanging up. There wouldn't be any of this user-generated leaving. Thanks for calling in. One more caller, because it's almost top of the hour. Yeah, let's bring in Aaron. 3, 2, 1.
I'm so excited.
Hey, thanks for calling the Tabletop Call-In Show.
Hey, hello.
Hey,
Aaron!
How you doing?
Yay! It's good to hear your voice again.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm personally excited because it's been a long time.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you. Actually, I was wanting to ask Adam, because with Reliance, I think you mentioned something about considering turning it GM-less and then considering the benefits of keeping a GM for that game. Because we encountered a situation earlier this week doing a playtest of Thomas Manuel's Mavericks. Shout out to Thomas who runs a really great indie games newsletter and also does like some playtesting stuff with the RPGC crew. And he ran a playtest where he had just removed a GM from a game that was previously GM'd, and was like encountering like issues with like, oh, you know, what a GM actually provides to a game, rather than just structure. And one of the things that we were talking about was like how a GM kind of like champions and shepherds fiction, and like kind of keeps it focused, and like what are the ways that the GM-less games like distribute that responsibility to the players or to like the mechanisms of the game. So like have you seriously considered like switching Reliance to GM-less, or like or Jeremy, I'm not sure if you've considered like turning a GM game GM-less versus like starting a game GM-less from the start, or like if you were designing a GM-less game, considering where what it does that requires it to be GM-less.
Yeah, so like
go ahead.
for Reliance, definitely when we did that playtest, towards the end, I was kind of starting to wonder like as the GM, what I was really adding. But then by the end, and then after a little conversation, like you were saying, like the shepherding of play and like the shepherding of the fiction and pushing it ever so gently into the direction that like the game is supposed to be heading in, is why I think ultimately that game will have a GM, because like as a story that, or as a game that's explicitly asking you, hey, don't tell a soft story about like, we win because we care. Like having the GM in that game is mostly there to make sure that you don't like water down how difficult the task at hand is. It's there to just remind the players like, oh, there's a bunch of stuff that is causing problems for you, and not necessarily doing that to like spite the players. Hopefully don't do it for that, but doing it just to be the person that is like, when it's somebody's job to push on it like that, which I mean, arguably that's the GM's entire job, is to push like that in most games. When it's somebody's job to do that, then that will happen. But whenever it's GM-less and it's, everybody is just supposed to push, depending on that leaves it a lot more up to the group, because some players are happy to like dunk on their characters and put them in bad situations and that kind of stuff. But it's definitely not out of the question that you will get many groups of players playing your game that aren't comfortable with that, because maybe they're used to having a GM, maybe they don't want to infringe on other players, like agency and stuff like that. So having a GM in a game that is trying to deliver a serious message, I think is good to make sure that doesn't get watered down. That said, like, it's definitely possible to just ignore the request for a GM, but I think as a designer, keeping it in is important sometimes.
Yeah. Sorry, Jeremy.
No, you go ahead. You got it first.
I was just saying, like the other part of the question is just like how like thinking about how GM-less games like achieve some of the things that GMs provide, like some of the functions that GMs provide, and like how you have to design around that. So like when you were saying about like getting a push from someone to like, hey, for Reliance, right? Like Revolution isn't an easy thing. So like to have someone to be the champion of that, like ways that like other games do it is like through prompts. Like we talked a lot about prompts when we were trying to nail down like what is it that was feeling missing from like losing the GM, and like one of the common ways to do it is like a neutral thing that the game provides, which is a prompt, right? And like the rules say you react to the prompt, and the prompt pushes you a certain way, and you can put in the, like, if we talk about principles and agenda from PBTA games, you basically build those into prompt lists when you are doing prompt based games, and for something like No Dice No Masters, the setting elements right? Like giving that assigning that responsibility through setting elements is a way to do it, where you essentially get like rotating GMs, and also how even in like really GMless games like Microscope, there still is a thing that drives that pushes everyone together to like push towards something, which is like
Right.
why I keep coming back to like key questions when you're doing Microscope scenes, right? You always ask a question that you're trying to answer, and like everything that you're doing in the scene is trying to answer that. Or like in Follow, you have like 3 acts, right? Like, and you're trying to like, okay, do we get through the challenge for the act, and what cost do we pay to get through that challenge? Like those are like
Right.
key things that you have in front of you and central in front of you, and that comes from the game rather than from the players.
Right.
Sometimes.
The structure of Follow is really interesting in this regard, because it like you're doing these challenges, but it's explicitly telling you show what your character would do to address the challenge, but don't resolve it in your scene. Don't think about that, because then it pulls you out into that drawing stones bit where you're okay. We just had 3 to 5 scenes, depending on how many players. Now let's see the collective result of that. And because it's so specific with those prompts, like, oh, you lose a character, or somebody betrays the fellowship, that really pushes it in the direction that the game wants to go, which is interesting that it does it outside of the role play part.
Yeah, but like it still has an impact on it, right? Like especially
a huge impact.
The way characters are created in that, with like I always love that tech of like, oh, what is something that you want that this person won't give to you, right? Like that sets up the stakes of those characters straight up, and like and plants the seed for like eventual breaking of like fellowship.
Right.
So like having all of that available like is really interesting. Like when it feels like there isn't a lot of like explicit mechanics in scene setting, but like it's actually pretty considered in how it does set up what you need to like run scenes that work within the type of story that you're trying to push for. Sorry, I interrupted you earlier, Jeremy.
No, not at all.
You were about to say something. Yeah.
So when I think about like what a GM does, and then like what a GM-less game, in my opinion, like stylistically, reviewing what a GM does, and what a GM-less game I feel needs to do to like emulate and keep things like moving, is I think what the GM serves to do at a table. In most cases, I won't say all cases. I'm sure there are games that maybe do this a little bit differently, but the GM is a sort of experienced mediator. They know how to ask leading questions. This is like the prompt stuff you were mentioning, right? That the players have to react to. But the other thing that I think a GM does for games is create a sense of urgency when it comes to those stakes or those prompts. Because I think in GM-less games, like I like Ironsworn a lot, but I think in my experience with its co-op version, where it's a GM full / GM less game in its co-op mode, I think that it can get very meandery based on the results you get off like the Oracle tables and stuff. So I think it's about making sure that there's ways that things keep moving forward regardless of failure or success. I think that's something that a GM-less game has to take under consideration. And then you also have to consider like narrative or fictional goal, right? Or goal of game, because there has to be an endpoint. I mean, I guess there doesn't have to be an endpoint, but if we're talking about like what a GM serves to do is help get you to a cathartic experience at some stage of your play that says, wow, I'm glad we reached the end and I feel good here now, if that's the experience you're providing. So I guess like urgency, I think they take off like a cognitive load of like options, right? Like a GM can present a specific option in front of you, or a specific set of options that say, and sort of like realign you if you're walking off of that path, right? So it's like, I think the GM role helps keep things concise as well in terms of options, urgency and time, acting as a mediator for like leading questions. And in terms of like thinking about shifting games or shifting my game design principles into a GM-less state, I think that Anyone Can Wear the Mask by Jeff Stormer is a really great example of a game that has modes in it. It's a game that sort of has 3 different modes of play. You can play without the villain. You can play. There's like a single player mode as well. It's sort of like a more journaling thing. And there's also like a competitive mode where the villain gets a little bit more power than the city does. And so, for anyone who may know, Anyone Can Wear the Mask is a game where it's 3 players. One person is the city, one person is the villain, and one person is the hero. And we follow the journey of the hero as they tell their story with these specified card drawing events. But Jeff Stormer includes a couple different modes of like how to execute. Like, hey, if you only have 2 players, this is how you play this game. If you want to play by yourself, this is what you would have to consider when playing by yourself. Like remove this mechanic or remove this thing, right? So it's about kind of modular modes. I think that's what I would consider for a game. Like I would find a way to have both, is what I'm saying. I would find a way to have both versions applicable to the game.
Like both GM and GMless?
Yes, yeah.
But if you think about, like, there are some games that like a GM just wouldn't make much sense in.
Oh yeah,
a lot of mostly like a lot of world building games. I don't know what a GM can. There could be somebody that might GM in the game.
I can't picture a GM in Grasping Nettles.
Right? Yeah. What would you even do?
Yeah.
but in a lot of those games, like you tend to still have someone who kind of like acts as a facilitator, right?
Yeah,
like,
for sure.
Oftentimes, it literally is just like, hey, stay on topic. That's kind of like often it's like, so the person who remembers the rules, so like GM as like rules
reference
guide
table,
or like
right?
or someone who like it champions the rules, I guess. But also like what you were mentioning is like, hey, keep things moving. Like, you know, when people are stumbling, it's like, oh, here, have a suggestion. When people are getting too into the weeds, like reminding them to like, hey, let's pull back outwards. Like, you know, we've been in this scene for like 40 minutes and we still haven't answered the question.
Oh no.
Which can be fun, right? Like,
it can be.
I mean, I would figure someone would call a stop to that before 40 minutes, but who knows? But yeah, like it's interesting. Like, do you find like writing in GMless games for facilitators sufficient? Like it's always kind of like an assumed role that someone would facilitate, but like I don't know how many games actually do really well on like providing that support for the facilitator role.
I think you go ahead.
It's a half an answer because I haven't actually read it, but I know one game that is GMless but specifically calls out for facilitator is Good Society. It's just a big book, so I haven't gotten through reading it yet. But the very beginning is like, this game doesn't really need a facilitator, but here's all the rules for a facilitator, and you should use one for at least a while. And I think that's probably a good direction to think about that.
Like a training wheels, onboarding sort of experience. That's smart. Yeah, if you have a more experienced person at the table, maybe it is sort of that both, but maybe that's the version of the both, right? It's like, you know, you instead of thinking about Game Master as someone with specific, like if I'm thinking about Game Master and Grasping Nettles, right? Like that's not really a possibility. But you do generally have the person in the group that sort of like will say like, this scene's probably done here. We're probably done with this scene. Let's move on to the next person's turn, right? Like that person exists, and they have to, well, not have to, but it
helps for sure.
Yeah, it helps. It helps keep, because you can get, I think you did this a couple times in the stream we were on, where you're like, well, that sounds like the end of that scene. Let's see if we can get to another faction turn or something like that. And just keeps that game moving around. So maybe it's not as much as thinking about Game Master as like a role to be played, but more as, when we're talking in terms of like shifting the GM list, more of like an onboarding program. Like, hey, I am the more experienced role player here to some respect, or I understand this game really well. Let's have me make some like guiding cutoffs, and then when we feel comfortable, I can really just fade to the background. Like that, the game allows me to fade to the background. Right? That's what I'm talking about. Is that the game has explicit writings like, hey, if you're all sort of new to this, maybe you have one person with this sort of like narrative control or mechanical control or whatever, And then once you feel comfortable, this game also works without those like power training wheels, I guess is what I'm alluding to.
But yeah, but it's interesting because like that gives GMs actually like dual roles, right? Like, well, not even dual roles. They play multiple roles. Like, and the facilitator role is one of them.
Yeah.
And it doesn't necessarily have to be that way, right?
Yeah.
Like we've talked about like how splitting up roles in different groups could work. Like, say for example with Band of Blades, when you have someone who actually like keeps track of like character sheets and stuff like that, and like splitting all of that up such that you have facilitator roles and administrative roles, like rules administrative roles, and then narrative control, and like to bundle all of that up into a traditional GM. Like you don't need to bundle all of them together, right?
Yeah.
Or think about whether like, hey, even if you make a GM game, how much of the advice that you're giving in GM advice is actually about narrative control versus how is it about facilitating a game?
It can be really helpful because whenever I was running 5e a while back, one of my players is like a GM in a different campaign that I'm still playing in. That's a long one. It's been like 5 years. But I didn't have to care about the minutia of the rules. I just needed a broad framework because he essentially was the facilitator while I was the GM. And anytime we were not sure about how the game works, I just looked over. And Kevin would like explain it, or like anytime we would hop into initiative, he would just kind of handle it on his side, and like that helped me a lot because I didn't have to spend all that cognitive power also trying to guide how the rules worked. I just had to engage with like the other half of being a GM of like the monster is doing XYZ. And that was great.
I would coin like Band of Blades to be like a GM fractured game in a way. Like that's I don't know. I'm really big on the word fracture for today, but like it could be something else. I think me and Viditya called it GM lessened in our DYD episode. But just the concept of like breaking up what a traditional GM does amongst all players at the table, like giving them those, you know, like you were saying, Aaron, like the ability to control narrative, the ability to be a reference tool, the ability to be to have sort of other things the GM does that I can't think of. Not my brain is shorting.
That makes me think of I don't have it yet, but it was a Zine Quest game called Dethroners.
It's a really interesting one.
Yeah, I'm excited to try it out. But it has like 10 different roles that the GM plays, and as the player characters like are, I think, killing gods or something similar, they're ripping pages out of the GM's handbook, and now they have that power. And so as the campaign goes on, the players
player power and rules instead. Yeah,
it seems really cool.
It's a really great pitch. Yeah,
I love it.
Yeah,
I love the sound of it.
Yeah, because I was thinking the other thing that like GM-less games do in terms of like narrative structure that replaces like what a GM does is often like having like predetermined structures. Like when you were talking about we were talking about Follow, right? Follow has like specifically, you know, at the end of it, like it's not guaranteed, but like, you know, someone will either get lost or betray the fellowship. Like that's always a possibility, right? And like,
you know,
something like down.
Okay.
Sorry?
I was going to say, and you know, you only have X amount of scenes
yeah.
before we're going to resolve this. So like push it to get your
like,
character.
Yeah, you got a timer ticking down. It's like, hey, there's only two more rounds, rather than like, you know, who's going to end the scene there when you're playing like something like Microscope, and it's like end when you think it ends.
Yeah.
And like something like Downfall as well was like really cool. It's like, it's never gonna end well, right? Like your haven's gonna fall. Everything's gonna get screwed, and like that's predetermined, and you have to kind of like play it out until it reaches that point. So that's kind of like one of the tech things in like GM-less games that you could like lean on to like have that part of like what you were saying, like moving things along, making sure things have narrative pace or like have they drive towards like narrative conclusions.
Yeah.
One way is to just like pre-build your conclusions in.
Yeah, no, I mean Skydagger Keep and Band of Blades,
Yeah,
Death and Ten Candles, like that's what I'm saying about like the urgency piece of this is like you need something that like defines the goal, the urgency, the steps you have to take. Because even if you like meander all the way through, you're gonna. I think there's this subconscious or maybe conscious like cognitive trigger that goes, oh shit, we have like 3 turns left until like we haven't really established how we're going to die or whatever have you, and it's like now we have to like bum rush towards that, which is fine. That's like that can be very fun in of itself too, but like we have to bum rush to death. But listen, words are hard.
I agree. You've heard me speak. I know that the
know
words
what
are hard.
I'm saying. You get the context, but like it, regardless of if you're meandering or if you're taking like very educated stabs at decision making when you know what the goal of the game is or the end result of the game is, I think it is helpful in a GM-less game for sure, especially because you have to think about the accessibility to someone who may have never played a role-playing game before, saw the cover of your GM-less game and was like, ooh, this looks really cool, picks it up, reads through it, oh, this sounds really cool, buys it, and then if there's no onboarding or no like hand holding, then they're probably not. There's a good chance they're not going to have a good time. I'm not saying it's impossible for them to have a good time if they're a new player, but percentages would be low in my best gut estimate.
Yeah, I actually have a question about like learning and like onboarding, but I don't know how long you'll want to keep going for. That could be a future thing.
Probably a future thing.
Yeah. Cool.
Sure.
All right.
Just being honest.
Yeah, I mean,
I want you back. Just come back. Just come back and ask us.
it's so late.
Yeah.
All right, yeah. If we're not going to do it, what?
I was asking Aaron what he's got for us.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Plugs, I guess, right?
Yeah. What do you mean? I guess. What do you mean? Make money.
Yeah, I make games, aaronlime.itch.io, AHRONLME, and Altogether Different River. I kickstarted that for Zine Quest this year, and that's pretty much done. The PDF's pretty much done. It'll be out officially in May. I'm just waiting on Homebound to be complete as well, so that like I did a revision of some of the games, so there'll be a revised version of Homebound's PDF coming out. I'm getting the layout next week, I think.
Awesome.
Oh, this week, I guess. So once both are ready, then I'll hit launch on both in May. So look out for that.
Super
awesome.
Cool.
Looking forward to it.
I love Homebound.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, of course.
It's a pretty personal project, so like I'm glad that it's getting some revisions. Cool.
Thank you,
All right,
Aaron.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for calling in. It's great to talk to you. And that is the show.
You can get Homebound in the DYD bundle that is live now on itch.io.
Look it up.
That's it. Look it up.
Look it up.
Google it.
Probably go to Jeremy's Twitter at JeremyGage5, and you
Yes.
can find a link to that somewhere.
And if you want to learn more about Grasping Nettle or Reliance, you can go to at Adam E. Bell on Twitter, or
Where I
you can
don't
go
tweet
to
about
Adam
it,
E.
but yeah.
Bell at itch.io.
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter there. You could find that stuff. I should be tweeting about it soon. I'm hoping to get back. This move thing has really been a pain in the ass. Because I was really hoping that April was going to be like the time to sit down and do this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But instead, my entire brain is occupied with moving my life to a different set of walls at
It
the
makes
whims
sense.
of landlords. It's very obnoxious.
Moving is a big task. Now,
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of people underestimate moving.
It-
They're like,
it's-
oh, it'll be fine.
Which it will be, but they don't. You underestimate how much you just are thinking about it, and that it just derails everything you want to be doing. Even if you're not actively packing stuff, it's like you just look at all your stuff and be like, I gotta get that in a fucking box. I'm looking
So as
over.
a reminder, there will be no show May 2nd.
no show next week. No show.
As of the recording of this episode, because we have the other episode that'll be coming out on podcast probably next week. It's fine if it doesn't.
I'll get to it. It's very easy to do.
Yeah. When you're listening to this, there will be a skip. If this is like 2023, there's no skip. Just go to the next episode.
Although maybe what I'll do, I don't know. We'll figure it out.
Yeah.
Point is, no show next week. We'll be back better than ever with a different background. Hopefully a better one. And we'll see you later. Thanks for being here. Follow us on Twitch. Follow me on YouTube. All that shit. We'll see you later.